Now working at Evil Corp through the job Angela got him, Elliot works to undo the damage caused by himself and F Society during the 5-9 hack. Assuming, of course, he can get through the corporate bureaucracy, the watchful eye of the FBI, and the ever-looming presence of Mr. Robot. It's Mr. Robot, episode 3.1, Undo.gz. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Mr. Robot. So yes, of course, lots of spoilers ahead. Alright, so Elliot is in the house of evil, as he dives into the tech side of Evil Corp through the sneaky little job Angela got him, trying to undo all of the damage that he has caused. We are seeing a much more mature Elliot through this season, who is really seeing the world much more as it is. He's almost leaving that kind of childhood, simplistic, binary view of the world. This is good and this is evil, and starting to see a lot of the gray areas. Specifically as he's talking about Evil Corp, as he's starting to see it now as maybe perhaps a necessary evil. You know, the line that he has about, maybe this was just my dorm room philosophy and that's why I call it Evil Corp. Again, he's re-looking at the world from a different place. But of course, he still has his hacker background going, and that's why I love that whole opening sequence as he's undoing, trying to talk about all the steps that he is taking, his ideas of keeping everything away from the building in New York, and running through, trying to do it, through the system, have his meetings, go through his bosses, get them to doom and refer, but of course, it's bureaucratic and corrupt bureaucracy, as we're really seeing is what Evil Corp is, where every manager, every level is doing something dark, something twisted, something of self-interest. So I just love that whole bit as he's going through the first boss and finding out that he's doing illegal data collections. And he's going through the next boss and he finds out that he is helping, fake emissions tests, until he gets to the next boss who finally, listens to her. We don't have to go through too many stages on it. But I love that bit, and it's not just trying to fix the problem. It's having to cover all of the bases. It's keeping, you can't get the paper all together in one place, because that's your single point of failure. So you've got to keep the records from being shipped into New York. And so with that, you've got to be able to move fake manifests and change shipping records and get all these physical copies moved around. Plus, just in case they do happen to get to New York or something goes bad, he's got to go in and change all of the little battery programs to be sure that those can't get hacked and actually burn the building down. So it's each layer. He's really looking to every, possible point that he can see, at least, where failure can come in. And it's made easier to a certain extent because of the ineptitude, in many ways, of the corporate culture around him. And it makes sense for a large corporation like that, is you have people that are just focused on their little boxes. You have all those, all of his bosses that had all of their individual kind of corruption bits going. That's what's taking their focus. But we even see the guy who's working in the office right next to him. All he's doing is talking about this girl he can get or whatever social issues he's going on. When he gets down to the New York office where he's trying to fix the whole battery problem, there we just have the security guards laughing and joking and not really paying attention to anything. So through this, we're seeing that kind of ineptness of the larger culture. But that's sort of what he sees it now as his mission is to not just tear it down, but to make it better. And I think that is part of his maturation process of really starting to see the world of not only can I just tear it down and let the world burn, but I can take the responsibility to actually fix these issues and make them better. All right, now, this week's file name, .gz, refers to gzip. It's a compression program, kind of like zip, a little bit different in how it compresses files. It also can truncate file names and stuff for older Linux systems. There's a lot of these are Linux-based file name designations. But what we're really looking here in that idea is that of compression. For instance, when you're compressing files, you can't get to them. And it's not just, it's one file, but it can have many multiple files or services or actions within that. And as he's undoing his actions of the 5.9 hack, it's not just one process, it's not just, press the undo button. He's got to help kind of rebuild a lot of the lost data. Plus he's got to keep the paperwork from getting together so it can't be sabotaged. Plus he's got to stop the batteries from overdoing and burning the building down just in case the stuff does get there. I mean, it's a multiple stage process. So it's his undo move is just sort of a compression of different techniques, different things that he has to do. But in some ways it also has to do with Elliot himself. He is undoing a lot of his own things. And like compression, you can't always access the file that is compressed until it's uncompressed. It's just for storage and moving around. And in a way that works a lot with his connection with Mr. Robot. Because right now the two of them are in a way compressed. They are working individually, but they can't share information the way they used to. Mr. Robot, he says, can't show Elliot certain things that he wants to see. And of course, Mr. Robot isn't aware of everything that Elliot is doing. And that leads us to a lot of very dramatic and intense moments in this episode too. So of course our first reappearance of Mr. Robot is when Darlene comes over and spends the night. And I have to say, that was so beautifully done. I mean, what we got last week when Angela was talking to Mr. Robot, how she can tell the difference, is that point of eye contact. Mr. Robot doesn't sway on eye contact. Elliot's always trying to look away. He's uncomfortable with that. And so when we have Darlene sneaking through the apartment, setting up the little thing behind the monitor so the FBI can watch, as a good CHS, confidential human source, would do. That sounds so impersonal, doesn't it? But when he appeared, when he first wakes up, you're thinking, is this Elliot? But his ability to maintain eye contact, not only the strenuousness of his speech and the physicality, but really it was that confidence that we don't see Elliot really maintain at any point, which I thought was a beautiful sign that this is Mr. Robot that Darlene is talking to, and not Elliot. And I thought it was a beautifully done moment. It was so intense, and there was such a great physical change from Rami Malek from one character to the other. I thought it beautifully conveyed that. And of course, ends up spurning Elliot to go back to Crystal, go back to his psychiatrist, who he has been diving back into anyway, to try and get some answers from Mr. Robot. In what was just another beautifully done scene. I mean, between the lighting, the directing, the picture making, my favorite part, of course, is when Elliot wakes up, and you can see that difference, again, in the eyes. That this is not Elliot, this is Mr. Robot. And then they do that super cool, almost Exorcist voice blend between his and Christian Slater's voice. It was just, that really just conveyed such an intensity, such a quick moment. And then the whole rest of the scene with the back and forth between him and Crystal, I thought was marvelously done. Now, there is one moment in that where I was kind of curious, because when he talks about, we've been compromised, and that forces Elliot to kind of go through his own last bit. It gets into his mind, he thinks we've been compromised, we can compromise. Did Mr. Robot tell Crystal that so that Elliot would go and start looking back at things? He's already feeling the discomfort of having Mr. Robot suddenly thrust back into his life, suddenly re-aware of it. But when Mr. Robot makes the statement of, I can't show Elliot the things I want him to see, because they are so separated that way, and that's part of the issues that Mr. Robot has, wants to get whole again, who doesn't, did he use Crystal in that sense in order to convey the message, you've been compromised, so that Elliot would then worry about that, and thus he could go back and find out what it was that Darlene was doing, which was, of course, putting in some little tracker in the back there so that the FBI could see what his computer code was saying. I would suspect so, because Mr. Robot is quite clever. which is something that I really like. But it just also leads up to that whole final sequence where he's able to backtrack the FBI. It just in a perfect hacker thing. Oh, you're hiding me? Well, let me send something secret, and then you're going to check out what that secret thing is, and then I will use that as code to go and backtrack and find out where you is. So now Dominique's little safe house there where they're hiding Darlene now has Elliot Alderson in there. But of course, it's not just Elliot we are talking about this episode. A few other people, one of which is Joanna Wellick for the last time, which I'm fine with it because I find her a rather scary and disgusting human being just overall. And I was thinking when she was doing that first interview, when she's talking about, Tyrell is the only man I will ever love and I made the mistake to divorce. And all I'm thinking is, what about the bartender? Have they killed him? Have they gotten rid of him? Has he moved out? Because he's not going to be happy to it. In fact, she had used that divorce agreement as a manipulation tool in order to get him to help, frame Tyrell's ex-boss there for the murder of his wife and kind of clean up that whole situation. So the following scene, when the guy does show up, I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense. And unfortunately, this is where Joanna and Tough Security Guy learn out that just threatening someone, especially someone in love, can have negative consequences. Hell hath no fury like a lover scorned, male or female. And of course, Joanna learns that very quickly with both the shot to her guard, who survived, man. I thought he was definitely the guy on our first one. And then Joanna herself with a bullet in the brain pan. So, kind of find that she's gone was perfectly appropriate, that was the way it was going to go. You do those manipulations too harsh, you have too much confidence, it's going to come back and bite you on the ass. The really sad point, of course, with that is the little baby. I mean, the shot of the baby with the blood all over the face, it's so sad. It's wrong. And then knowing that they're just being sent off to child services, the FBI can be cold. Super cold. Then, of course, we have the battles of the giants between Philip Price and White Rose. In that beautiful kind of G20 scene, we are seeing as, Ecor's whole move behind this, what Philip's move behind supporting the 5-9 hack is so with the financial markets crashed, he can get eCoin to be the currency of choice, the benchmark currency from which all currencies matter. It's currently the dollar across the world. You get eCoin to do it. That cements it as the benchmark currency. So control that currency, you can control the world. Of course, White Rose not so happy with him. They're doing their little battles because China wants Bitcoin. And why does China want Bitcoin? Because they're not appreciative with what Price is doing right there. I mean, really, it's converging giants. What we really see, of course, is we have this big push back and forth so that Price can be sure that eCoin is the currency of the land, and in exchange, he will approve the UN vote for China to annex Congo. We've been hearing about Congo and everything, and this is their actual plans, to annex the Congo. The big question is why? Well, I mean, the Congo is a mineral-rich land. It's got plenty of water. It's connected to the second largest river in the world. Plus, it's got deposits of gold and various minerals and oil, and there's probably even, the rare earth minerals, rare earth metals that are needed for cell phones. So there's a lot of rich natural resources in Congo. Is it that they're after, or is it a place where they can move their project, which is, I think, the big time travel project we got a glimpse of last week, to there? From the Washington Township plant to the Congo, where, of course, it's going to be a lot less regulation, a lot less eyes upon it. So we are slowly starting to see where White Roses, where the whole Dark Armies motivation is, why they want all of these things. But one thing they're definitely going to get right now is some more damage to Ecor, because as White Rose has said, do not mistake my generosity for generosity. Which doesn't seem to make sense. Usually it's generosity for kindness, but no. It is. He is generous only because it serves him. He's not an actual generous person. Anything he does that appears generous, that appears to be giving, is only to further serve his ends. And unfortunately, Philip Price is about to learn that he's going to be on the wrong side of that one. All right, just a couple of small things here. One, the story of Kevin McCallister. Really interesting moment there. I mean, first is Elliot's kind of reflecting on that when he's speaking with Crystal, but also the realization that Crystal had never heard that story. Now we've seen that tale told a couple of different times from a couple of different positions. We've seen Elliot going out of the window in one episode. We saw his parents arguing while they were in the hospital in another. So we have seen that story, that event, from a couple of different viewpoints. What's interesting here is when Darlene is leaving Elliot's apartment, she pulls out that picture, and we don't get a close-up to it. We just see it for a brief moment. I'm sure everybody with HD has gone and frozen that and zoomed right in, because what it looks like from the brief bit that we saw is two kids standing next to a snowman. But in Elliot's story, they didn't get to take that picture because he went inside to get to the camera, and that's when he got knocked out, pushed out the window by his dad, and ended up in the hospital all day. So if they took that picture, what part of that story is a lie? Is it him falling out the window? Is it how he fell out the window? Is it a different day entirely that got covered up? I mean, as he started mentioning that bit in that story to Darlene, Darlene seemed to have a very strong reaction to it. So there is something else associated with that. But I think the idea that they actually took that picture and Elliot doesn't remember, much like remembering that he told Crystal but he didn't, seems to mean that there is some other event during that day that's going to shine a big light on his connection with Mr. Robot. Oh, and the dog? Yeah, you know why the dog was pooping all over that guy's place? Because he's an asshole, because he was cheating on his wife and he was upset at Elliot for it. I think the dog was doing that because he didn't want to be there anymore and he wanted to go back to Elliot's place. So I think he's going to be a very well-behaved dog. Elliot's eCorp password, 23 characters long. Okay, none of this 7, and please be sure that you use at least one capital letter and one number. No, 23 characters long. If you're using both uppercase and lowercase, that's 26 and 2652, plus 10 digits, plus a couple of extra characters, say 65-ish characters out of 23. That's what, 3 to the 43rd power, 3 with 43 zeros behind it, possible combinations. That's pretty secure. That other scene when Elliot was speaking with Crystal during the first meeting where she asks him, what made you think of that story, the story of Kevin McCallister? There's that long hold on Rami Malek. That's a long hold and a push in for quite some time. And you see so much going on in that face of repression and thought and just being able to hold that moment. That is some powerful acting. Rami Malek is amazing and I think really works well within the beautiful craftness of this show. Just the camera work is incredible. And you can really tell that, I think, through most of the other shots. Here's a good way of looking at it. If there's any point where you can freeze the show and you have a perfectly framed picture that you can put on a wall, that's a beautifully framed shot. Same thing done with the super gross little head autopsy on Joanna Wellick. Yeah, nice disgusting sound up front with the hammering and chiseling. But the whole point where Dominique's talking to her FBI colleague there, about what I loved about it is that he's worried about Darlene being a flight risk, and the next thing we actually see Darlene talking about potentially leaving town. She doesn't, but anyway, that whole scene was just perfect. With the two of them, and right in the background, perfectly framed in the center, is Joanna's dead body getting the brain worked on and photographed. Just that whole scene was just so beautifully shot. Creepy, but beautifully shot. And the giant emoticon heads, those were awesome. Nothing like that pan around the subway where you're just seeing all of the happy and sad and smiley and flirty faces. That was just a trip. I love seeing it. Now that audio clip, the recording that Dominique played for Darlene of Tyrell calling up Elliot, yeah, that was back in the beginning of last season, where we had the illusion of Elliot living with his mom and going to counseling and doing all those normal things, when in reality he was in jail. Yes, so at that point the phone had rang, he'd walked up the hallway, picked it up, and we had just heard Tyrell say those words, "Bonsoir, Elliot." So obviously, for as long as the FBI has had Elliot and Darlene under observation, certainly on their suspect list, would make sense that they have that recording, but also all jail conversations are recorded. Just, an FYI for you. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers everything. Now, of course, with the death of Jeanne Wellick, we got a little baby that's got no mom, does have a dad, Tyrell. And next week, I think we get to dive into Tyrell's story a little bit. Where has he been? What has he been doing since this whole thing went down and he disappeared at the end of season 1? That, I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and hopefully some more of what's going on with the Dark Army, what is Right Rose really after, and can Elliot really undo this hack? I'm guessing it's not going to be as easy as he thinks. But anyway, we'll have to wait till next week to see that. But if you did enjoy this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. Was that a picture of Kevin McCallister and the kids? What do you think? Any other ideas, theories? Where has Tyrell been? What do you think that we're going to wait and see next week? Anyway, throw those down in the section below. Now, you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. And as usual, if you are not a subscriber, please do. It's quick, it's easy. You hit one button and you catch the rest of Mr. Robot dirt gently. We're doing The Gifted. Just switching over to that because it's so good and Inhumans is so bad, but I'm still covering that. Plus, of course, Walking Dead returns this Sunday. All Out War, super excited. Anyway, you won't miss any of those if you're a subscriber. Do that by clicking this button right here, and I'll throw up our latest reviews for The Gifted and the season finale of The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, rather, right there. Anyway, that's it. I'm out of here. I'm D. And I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.